No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. This is Outspoken Live, episode number 140. Stop what you're doing right now. Click the subscribe button, please, because that massively helps what is a brand new independent news venture for the UK and the Western world. Breaking right now, the Reform UK Tommy Robinson split becomes more pronounced as Matt Goodwin sides with Nigel Farage over the man who I believe is a political prisoner. I'll reveal Matt's reasoning in my digest next and reveal how the US hard left is stepping up its attacks on Tommy in a bid to discredit Elon Musk ahead of next week's Trump inauguration. See, it's all connected, folks. Then, Father Calvin Robinson returns for the first time in 2025 to weigh in on that and where the reform is wrong to consider Charlie Mullins as a candidate. Also coming up on the show today, why the hell are whites being banned from applying for jobs in Westminster? The BBC's shame is revealed as a woman who called out the rape gangs scandal was shut down. I've got that shocking video. And is the West now morally bankrupt as Bonnie Blue and Lily Phillips, if you haven't heard of them, you're very lucky, become international celebrities? Plus, actually, on a similar note, Andrew Tate has fired back against Ben Shapiro in this major war of words on the right.
Did you know that OnlyFans gives tens of millions of dollars a year to AIPAC? Ben Shapiro never mentions that, does he? Wants to cry his eyes out that I used to be a pornographer. Because I've admitted that over a decade ago, I had an e-girl studio. Girls would sit there in grainy footage, 480p, you could barely see anything, and sometimes they'd be topless. Yes, I've admitted it. I've talked about it.
Okay, so I'll tell you how that all relates. That both Ben Shapiro and Andrew Tate are accusing each other of being pornographers. This is down and dirty, folks, but I'll show you what Shapiro has to say on that. Then, in the uncancelled after show, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, now Hollywood pariahs after the backlash to their LA fires disaster. Tourism grows. Californian royal YouTube sensation P. Dina joins me live stateside with their latest bid at damage control, which has just been completely blown out of the water by TMZ. Big developing story, this in the royal and entertainment world. Remember, the Uncancelled After Show now broadcast exclusively daily and on demand on my Substack. You can Google it or get to it right now by visiting www.outspoken.live. Just enter your email address right in that little box. Click on subscribe. It will only take about 30 seconds. If you want to go for the paid monthly membership from just £5 plus VAT in the UK a month, then you get access to the after show, but there's loads of other content on there. You can sign up completely for free. It really helps me. It really helps the Outspoken community. And the most important thing is it protects against big tech cancellation. So that really matters. Let me just repeat the address for you. www.outspoken.live. But now, let's go. The battle lines on the right are being drawn as a significant split breaks out over the treatment of the political prisoner Tommy Robinson by major US conservative figures like Jordan Peterson and Elon Musk, compared to Reform UK's Nigel Farage and Richard Tice. Now, there's a bit of an irony in all of this for me, because what you've got is hard left losers like Mehdi Hassan singing from the same hymn sheet as British populists who I usually agree with, like Matt Goodwin. So I'll reveal their interventions shortly. But I want to be very clear on this. My goal is to try and bring both sides of this argument together over the next few years for the common cause of defeating the socialist Labour government, saving Britain, and then the West, right? Because there's a lot to be done. And as Carl Benjamin pointed out today, reform is currently poised to sweep the northeast of England in what would be a monumental political earthquake reshaping British politics. And despite being critical of many of Farage's toned-down policies, Carl Benjamin is actually coming around. to this idea of backing Farage come what may. So let me show you this really fascinating exchange that he had with someone called Based London Jew, who wrote, "It's time you and the rest of the Lotus eaters fully back Farage and worry about who will replace him later." Carl Benjamin quite thoughtfully replied, "I think this is correct. Whatever misgivings we on the right have about Farage, he is clearly onto a winning strategy, and even if he does nothing else, breaking the hold of the uniparty duopoly in the consciousness of the average voter is probably a good service." But Nigel's recent rhetoric regarding Tommy Robinson has turned this battle quite nasty, including sparking a dramatic response from Tommy himself behind bars at HMP Woodhill.
When you're in prison, small things are big things, and this isn't even a small thing. And they're big things because you sit and stew about them all day. And to say last week I was disappointed, or this week I've been disappointed with Nigel Farage is an understatement. But I've gone from disappointment to outraged, as he's now lied on national radio. He's made the allegation that I have a criminal conviction for violence against women.
Robinson's talked about this, but he has a criminal record, a list as long as your arm. Violence against women.
It's an out-and-out lie. Nigel's a big voice, a serious voice. He gets taken seriously. People believe what he says. And he, time and time again now this week, he's took his opportunity to defame me, to slander me, to lie about me. In a week where he sat, and I watched because he accused Kemi of lying about him, because Kemi said he played with a few numbers on his membership scheme. It's a bit of a different lie to making the ultimate accusation that I am violent against women.
In a significant intervention this week, Matt Goodwin, however, has fully backed Farage's stance. Now, he did this on his very popular Substack and setting up the Robinson versus Farage battle. This is how Matt Goodwin described it. I'll read it out to you. On one side of the debate are some very significant people in America, including Elon Musk, intellectual Jordan Peterson, people in and around the Trump camp, and a handful of American politicians who wield considerable power and influence. They are joined by the so-called online right here in Britain, a loose network of mainly younger activists who often have a significant following on social media and/or write and appear in new media. Together, and I'm painting broad brushstrokes here, this group view Tommy Robinson as a Nelson Mandela-style figure, somebody who, for much of the last 15 years, has, in their eyes, courageously called out the rape gangs, radical Islamism, and spoken up for the white working class when very few people in this country were willing to do so. And actually, so far, that's so accurate from Matt Goodwin. But he went on to say, on the other side of this debate are people like Nigel Farage, most of the Reform MPs, and many disgruntled British Conservatives who have a somewhat different view of Robinson, one shaped by decades of campaigning in and actually winning nationwide elections and a deep familiarity with the British psyche. They say that while it might be true that Tommy Robinson has a significant following among Americans who have little understanding of the intricacies of British politics, as well as the online right who have little experience of winning elections, it is also true that Robinson remains a fringe, divisive and toxic figure in British political life who is making the task of saving our country much harder than it ought to be. And Goodwin then analysed the latest polling on this, which appears to back the Farage position. And I'll show that to you now. But he also explained that a much larger number of people out there in the country, people who will actually decide the outcome of the next election, people who will actually determine whether or not we get serious opposition to the failing elite consensus, welcome Farage's decision. Now, for me, I have to be honest, that is a bit of an odd take. And 99% of the time I agree with Matt Goodwin. But I believe our job in the independent media is to shift the Overton window towards not what is popular, but what is right. So let's just think about during COVID, right, where the vast majority of Brits supported the ludicrous measures, both in terms of lockdowns and vaccines, which ended up destroying our economy, destroying our trust in the establishment. Now, the fact that the majority supported it through largely nefarious state propaganda didn't make it the right moral position to take. And I think now, a few years on, the vast majority of sane people agree with that. The Overton window has shifted when it comes to COVID and lockdowns because of brave people who did speak up against the establishment consensus. And what I think should concern people like Matt is that the far left in the US is stepping up its attacks on Tommy in a bid to discredit Elon Musk ahead of next week's Trump inauguration. So Mehdi Hassan, he runs a massive hard left independent Substack called ZTO. And just today, it sent out a bulletin to its hundreds of thousands of subscribers headlined, "Who is Tommy Robinson? 5 things you need to know about the far-right Islamophobe Elon Musk is fighting to free from prison." And their laughable conclusions are that he is a violent Islamophobe. Tommy Robinson isn't his real name. Whoa, what a revelation there. They say he's a serial criminal. He's a fanboy for Russia and Israel, and he isn't in prison for telling the truth. So that's like their rap sheet on Tommy Robinson. And if you follow this narrative, which, let's be honest, the British mainstream media has spewed for many years, Tommy, you would think, is a very bad man. So the people who are answering these polls that Matt Goodwin quote only really have that information in their head. But anyone who has actually followed the cause and the truth rather than the rhetoric, which I think is designed to stop any real change in the British deep state, who are destroying our country, you know that is a ludicrous characterization of Tommy Robinson. Watch.
Because I know how upset my children have been. And they don't know I'm home. My children don't know I'm home. They don't know I've been released. They're going to in a minute.
Daddy!
Guess who's coming on holiday?
Daddy!
Coming on holiday, babe. Come here. Come here. Oh, I'm sorry. You home?
Make your own decisions. Now, Father Calvin Robinson is today's outsider. Father Calvin, Happy New Year. You've got some very exciting things happening over your way in 2025. But this row between Tommy Robinson and Farage's camp just seems to get more nasty, more intense by the day. What did you make of Matt Goodwin's intervention backing Nigel Farage on this and saying, actually, look at the polls, the British public are not on the side of Elon Musk when it comes to supporting Tommy Robinson?
Yes, Happy New Year, Dan. It is indeed very exciting out here right now, especially this week. This drama goes on and on, doesn't it? Nigel Farage just should have never opened his mouth. He should have never mentioned Tommy Robinson's name. He should have battered the question away. And quite often, he's volunteering information when a question isn't even asked. The mistake he's making is falling into that trap. He doesn't have to support Tommy, but he certainly should not be disparaging Tommy. Now, I think Matt Goodwin, I've known Matt Goodwin for a long time. Right? He's only a few years older than me. We've been around the political circle a long time. I think he's very clever. He's got a lot of degrees, and he's very good at numbers. He's very good at looking at data. And so being charitable, I would say he's looking at this from an autistic perspective. He's looking at this purely numerical. Like, this is what the numbers say. This is what the numbers say we need to do. If I was feeling uncharitable, I'd say he's taking an elitist stance, and this is quite a problem with lots of people in our politics. When I hear things like, yes, Tommy Robinson might have fought the good fight, what he's saying might be true, but his brand is toxic and we need to win elections, I hear elitism. I hear that's the exact problem with our system. It doesn't, if that's their line and they win, it doesn't actually matter if they win, because they're exactly the same as the people they're replacing. We need people to come in and say, Tommy Robinson has been right all along, and that's why we're going to fight for him. We're not going to leave him in prison to rot over a contempt of court case that's left him in prison for 18 months and solitary confinement and maximum security, etc. A heavy-handed approach of the state. We're not going to leave him there, because leaving Tommy there is leaving all of us there. Tommy has been fighting for the common folk, and if they are going to disparage and besmirch the common folk, Tommy Robinson, they're disparaging and besmirching the rest of us too.
Yeah, and it's quite condescending, isn't it, Calvin, to keep saying, oh, these Americans. They might be the smartest people in the world. They might be right on every other issue, but they know nothing. When it comes to Tommy Robinson, they're just wrong on this one thing. And actually, loads of the people who I really respect, who are brave, including those who operate in the mainstream media, have had a very different take on Tommy Robinson for some time. And one of them is Douglas Murray. And I wanted to show you this video that I found from a little while ago, where Douglas Murray is asked a question overseas about Tommy Robinson, and I think gives a much more thoughtful response than virtually anyone else in the mainstream. Watch this.
About like Tommy Robinson, since it's also applicable to your country, and I would like to know if you have some thoughts about that topic.
Let me tell you what I think is general. I wrote about this a few weeks ago in the National Review in America, but let me tell you what I think is actually going on. I think, and it goes back slightly to the gentleman's question there, I think that there is when you realize that you have got some very serious problems in your society, it's very hard to deal with the primary issue. What is easy to deal with is a secondary issue. So let me give you the example. For years, the thing that Tommy Robinson's been particularly vocal about, the grooming gangs, the rape gangs, they're sometimes called Asian rape gangs, which itself is a problematic phrase, okay? These went on for years. We have report after report from the British government, the British authorities, admitting this is going on. Council workers who knew it was going on. Police who knew it was going on. All the local authorities who knew what was going on. All the local MPs who knew what was going on, okay? Every single part of society failed. Every single part. The police, the official reports all say the same thing, were worried about being politically incorrect. The council workers were worried they'd be accused of racism, and so on and so on and so forth. So you have by now, and I'm not exaggerating this is all of the stuff of the official findings, thousands and thousands of young girls from across the UK have been raped by these gangs. Now that's a bad thing to have on your conscience. That's the sort of thing that should keep any decent person awake at night if they had even a tiny role in allowing that to go on. But they don't address what allowed that to go on. We keep seeing this tendency to get the secondary problem and go really hard for that. And the secondary problem always is the people who vocally, often wrongly, often crassly, all sorts of other things, identify in opposition to that. And they come down, they crack down on that.
He's so right, isn't he, Father Calvin? There is more mainstream media and establishment outrage about Tommy Robinson than there is about the Asian rape gangs themselves.
Absolutely right, and it's disgusting because anyone that's not angry, anyone that's not voicing upset and hurt over these Pakistani Muslim rape gangs at this point is complicit, because we all know what's happened over the last few decades. We all know, and Douglas Murray rightly points out, that it's been covered up by the councillors, by the politicians, by the police, by the therapists, by everyone involved, from the bottom up to the top to the ministers. Everyone has been covering this up for the sake of diversity, inclusion, and multiculturalism. So anyone that's not speaking about it now is complicit, not because of what's historically happened, but because it's still happening today. This is still going on, and we can't stop it until people address it, and they want to hide from it. And so it's easier to say, oh, it's the problem of it's the bandwagon of the far right, which is exactly what our Prime Minister said just a week ago. It's terrible that they'd rather lock up Tommy Robinson for addressing the situation than they would address the situation itself. And our politicians are a part of the problem, but the mainstream media is a massive part of the problem too. They hate Tommy Robinson because he does a better job than they do. He gets more higher ratings than they do as well for doing it. So of course they despise him. But what they, just over the last few days, Channel 4 had a documentary out, the Muslim rape gang situation isn't as bad as it seems. It's like, how dare you? These young white British working class girls they're literally being groomed, raped, tortured, and sometimes killed. And you'd rather cover up for that? Shame on you. You are a part of this issue.
Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. The other row on the right, Calvin, which I want to get your view on, concerns whether Charlie Mullins is going to be a candidate for Reform UK. Now, Zia Youssef he's the chairman of Reform UK, he has tried to play down these reports over the last 24 hours, but Charlie Mullins himself has said that Nigel Farage has asked him to be a candidate. Now, Charlie Mullins is a very successful businessman, really good on some things. He's been on Outspoken before, but the issue is here he's an arch Ramona who also said that he would sack his staff at Pimlico Plumbers if they did not take the COVID vaccine.
Worse than that, he said people shouldn't be allowed out on the streets if they haven't taken the Wu flu jab. That's awful. Talk about anti-freedom. Yes, I've seen a meme going around. Dick Dellingpole tweeted it with clanger, banger, and jabber. So Nigel Farage is the clanger, stood there banging his drums for the NHS, the national religion. And then you've got Richard Tice stood there in Ukraine as the banger, holding up, look, I'm supporting the Ukraine, send all our money abroad. And then you've got the jabber, who is this guy with his Stop Brexit hat on, Mullins, who is clearly a pro-medical forced vaccination. It just goes to show that what I've been saying all along, that the Reform Party is just a part of the establishment. They're nothing new.
But then our pal Calvin, Esther Kraku, I saw her on X saying, hang on a moment, the fact that he's Ramona shouldn't matter because it's really important that people move on from the Brexit divide.
Fair play. If she wants to make that argument, fair play. But I'd say we're still not over that. The country still has not recovered from the Brexit divide. And part of that is because politicians cannot gather together to do what's in the best interests of the country. Like we have more mass immigration now than we did before Brexit. The whole point of Brexit was to control our borders. But our politicians are still the ones flooding, keeping the gates open to be flooded with mass immigration. And so we need politicians on side to decide what's in the best interest for our country based on who elects them. And I don't think having an arch Ramona like that in the party will do them any favors. But it's not, of course, it's not just his Ramon stance. It's also the fact that he's massively in favor of forced medical intervention.
Another really shocking story over the past 24 hours, Father Calvin. This was uncovered by our friend Andy No, the independent journalist, who posted on X, the Westminster City Council has posted a DEI job recruitment ad that says whites will be discriminated against. Now, this job, Calvin, is for an executive assistant working within the city of Westminster. The salary, pretty astonishing to me, a range of up to £64,000 for an executive assistant. Sounds like a very good salary. But let me read the job advertisement to you, because this is what's really shocking. The council is committed to achieving diverse shortlists to support our desire to increase the number of staff from underrepresented groups in our workforce. We especially encourage applicants from a global majority, GM, people who are Black, Asian, brown, dual heritage, indigenous to the global south, or have been racialized as ethnic minorities, formerly known as BAME, Black, Asian, and multiple ethnic background. And while the role is open to all applicants, we will utilize the positive action provisions of the Equality Act 2010 to appoint a candidate from a global majority background where there is a choice between two candidates of equal measure. And they say, if you are from a global majority background, you can self-declare this to the hiring manager as part of our positive action commitments. Calvin, if you're white, don't you dare apply.
This is absolutely awful. I think it's actually an illegal interpretation of the Equalities Act. The Equalities Act isn't supposed to give positive discrimination, and it quite clearly says positive action. This is to prevent people from being discriminated against. It's not to discriminate in favor of people. It's two very different things. And so what the Equalities Act is there for is to say you cannot discriminate against people based on their ethnicity. Right, which I think we would all agree on, because we support meritocracy. The best person for the job should get the job. But what people are interpreting it as is, oh, we can discriminate people in favor of their ethnicity to show that we're not discriminatory. That's
Father Calvin, I mean, does this not sum up the absolute despicable nature of the mainstream media, specifically the British Bashing Corporation? Look how quickly they wanted to move that conversation on to being one of female sexuality.
And the issue of rape has nothing to do with female sexuality. For him to suggest that it does or imply that it does is disgusting on his part. These women are being raped because the men doing so don't see them as human beings. That's part of the problem. We have to address why is that. He's right. We need an adult conversation, but he's not the one having it. He's deflecting away from the adult conversation for his own political agenda. And many of the people there, much of the audience there, were trying to be like, oh. So even if it's true, it may or may not be true, but even if it is true that there is a problem in that area, that particular area, with Asian men raping young British girls, even if it's true, they don't want to hear it. Because just saying those words, it breaks down their idol of diversity, inclusion, and multiculturalism. They can't have the adult conversation. The response was the ooh and the ah and the hissing, rather than saying, well, what's happening here? Are young girls being raped? Who's doing the raping? And then further on, why is this certain demographic doing it? And then further on, what can we do about that? And we can't even get to the what can we do about it yet, because we're so far down the chain of the conversation. Now, my personal stance is that if this is predominantly Pakistani Muslim men that are raping girls in the United Kingdom, then we should have a moratorium on Pakistani Muslim men entering the United Kingdom. And actually, we should look at deporting Pakistani Muslim men, because it's certainly a clash in cultures, a clash in ideas and values, and a clash in religion, and it's not working for us. We can't sit back and let our daughters, our sisters, our mothers, our aunties be raped for the sake of an ideology. It's disgusting. And all the people that are saying, ooh, we can't mention that, they are part of the problem, and they need their eyes opened, but they can't have their eyes opened because they're so blinkered by this idol of you must not say something that goes against the religion of peace because it will be seen as racist or xenophobic or Islamophobic. So what? I would rather be racist, Islamophobic, xenophobic than supporting the rape of young white girls.
And Father Calvin, the thing is, that was 2013. Right? So you would hope, wouldn't you? You would hope that there had been some sort of major change in society over the past decade, with people actually hopefully understanding the scale of what had gone on and the reason why we need to talk about it. But this week in Wales, there was one of the most shocking incidents of the political establishment attempting to shut down this discussion. So I'm going to show you some of this exchange between Darren Miller. He is the new Tory leader in the Welsh Parliament, the Welsh Senate. So he's a Conservative MS. And he states some very difficult to hear, but utterly important facts about the rape gangs scandal. However, the presiding officer, Elon Jones, who is effectively the Welsh equivalent of the Speaker of the House, tries to shut him down, suggesting his language is somehow spreading hatred. Now, this is really hard to believe that it's still going on, that this happened this week. But watch for yourself, and Father Calvin, I'll get you to react off the back.
Welcome to Wales. We understand being a refugee isn't easy. They go through so much.
Fleeing your country is difficult, but Wales wants to help you feel welcome.
The Welsh Refugee Council is here to help you. You can contact...
Sorry, that was the wrong video, actually. So we'll just look at the video from the Welsh Parliament now, hopefully.
From media reports, we know from media reports that young girls have been recruited by grooming gangs here in South Wales before being gang raped and then trafficked to Telford, Hereford and Blackpool. One victim has even said that she was strangled, she was threatened with a knife, and her home was threatened with being burnt down. She was then raped, I'm afraid to say, First Minister, 1,000 times. She didn't know the number of perpetrators because there were so many.
I need you to come to your question now. You are being overly descriptive, and I think verging on not being totally respectful of the victim at this point. So can you tone down the rhetoric slightly?
I'm afraid I'm simply reading facts.
No, you're not.
No, you're not.
The use of language in this place needs to be making sure that you are keeping well away from inflaming any kind of discrimination or inciting of any kind of discrimination. You were doing very well, Darren Miller, with your first two questions in avoiding that. In your third one, you've become overly descriptive, and I need you to now reflect on that and just ask the question again, please.
I am not seeking to inflame anything.
Good. I'm glad you confirmed that. I'm glad you confirmed that. Now carry on with your question.
Shame on her. What a patronising, despicable woman who is actually doing her own sex a disservice here, trying to be on the side of the victims. And if you watch that exchange continue, she ends up threatening to silence Darren Miller altogether unless he immediately puts his question. I just could not believe it, Calvin.
Absolutely wicked woman. And she shows her hand because she starts out by saying, oh, it's the language is too graphic. You're doing a disservice to the victims, but it's not about the victims, because she goes on to say, what we don't want you doing in here is inciting discrimination against certain demographics. That's the crux. That's the clincher. That's the matter that she's really upset about. She doesn't want people getting angry at the Muslims that are doing this, the Pakistani Muslims that are doing this grooming and raping and abuse and torture of these young girls. She's not concerned about the victims and the survivors. I know some of these victims and survivors from those places that were just discussed in that clip, and I think it's absolutely disgusting that we have so many people protecting the perpetrators rather than the victims and the survivors. Their story deserves to be heard, and the men deserve justice, and that means they should be deported at the very least, if not hanged for what they're doing to these young girls. It's absolutely evil, and the people like her who are covering it up for the sake of we must not incite any kind of... No, we need discrimination. We need discrimination against the people that are perpetrating this. Anyone that is coming to our country and raping our girls needs to be discriminated against. That should be the law, not protecting them.
Yeah. But the point is, the establishment want to pretend this didn't happen. They can't stand hearing the details because the details are so shocking. And there's a real problem, Calvin, even for people like me having to operate within the big tech world, because what happens, and hopefully this is going to change a little bit with Meta's new positioning in terms of political conversation, but they shut us down too. They shadow ban the content. They put age controls on the content as well, because yes, you are talking about something which is incredibly difficult, but it happened. And if people don't know that it happened, then there's not going to be the outrage to force and demand the change. But unfortunately, something mad is going on in Wales at the moment, because the Welsh Refugee Council is using 12-year-old girls in an advertisement meant to entice migrant men to come to Wales. Most members, by the way, of this council are from the Middle East, India, and Pakistan. Watch this.
Shemai. Hello and welcome to Wales. We understand being a refugee isn't easy. They go through so much.
Fleeing your country is difficult, but Wales wants to help you feel welcome.
The Welsh Refugee Council is here to help you. You can contact...
I mean...
They may as well just put out a shopping list. This is a catalogue. Come here. These are for you. It's absolutely... It's demonic. There's no other... How is this not evil?
I know. And the thing is, Calvin, I can see exactly what the usual suspects, the establishment, are trying to do to shut down this conversation. I actually was furious as well with Wes Streeting, the Labour Health Secretary, who gave an interview to the left-wing media actually suggesting that what they describe as grooming gang rhetoric risks inciting mass violence. And he used the example of the mosque shooting in New Zealand. So again, I think that is utterly, utterly evil. I'll use your word, Calvin. It's evil because it's saying if you talk about these most terrible crimes that took place in our country that were ignored by the establishment and ignored by the mainstream media, if you even talk about them, you are risking other violence.
You know what? I will agree with him, actually. I'll say, yes, it does incite mass violence. Yes, it does. But the way to solve that isn't to stop us talking about it, it's to stop it from happening. Stop these Pakistani Muslim men from raping our girls, and then you will stop the violence which will come as a reaction from Pakistani Muslim men raping our girls. You don't stop people talking about the rape. You don't say, oh, this grooming gang rhetoric is what's... It's not the rhetoric that's going to cause the violence. It's a reaction to you guys not doing anything about them coming over here and raping our daughters.
Yeah, so you would go down the Trump route of a Muslim travel ban.
Oh, I mean, I've been saying this for a long time. I don't think... I think there's too much incompatibility between Islam and Christianity, and England is still a Christian. While it is still a Christian country, we should have a moratorium. No more immigrants or refugees from Islamic countries unless they are Christian refugees, because we have to have people that share our values and want to protect our vulnerable and our innocent, and see that as a good thing, and don't see them as a shopping list or a menu for their own debauched, depraved, disgusting lifestyles. The fact that this is happening so often, so frequently in so many places around the country, and no one wants to stop it because it's too dangerous to talk about it, says that we need drastic actions. And one of those actions is no more Islamists, no more Muslims, no more Mohammedans in the United Kingdom. And actually, let's go further. Let's deport the ones that we currently have.
I do wonder if the Overton window has been shifted on this conversation by Elon Musk, because I was looking at a comedy performance from Unleashed Comedy. Now, that is certainly a comedy club which does support right-wing comedians, and I think that's a great thing. Lots of the folk who are involved with it are also involved with headliners on GB News. But I was watching this particular act by a guy called Nicholas DeSanto, who I hadn't heard of before. I have to be completely honest. And I just thought, wow, actually, if comedians are now talking about the madness of the situation, maybe it has broken through. Maybe this is a genuine moment of cultural change. So I know some people will say, oh, you shouldn't laugh about this issue at all. But actually, I think it's probably important that it becomes part of the national conversation. But I'll let you be the judge. Let's have a watch of this together, Calvin, and then you can respond off the back.
Mattel have released their latest inclusive Barbie, a Barbie with Down syndrome. Previously, they had released Barbie with hearing aid and Ken with a skin disease. It's all part of an effort to make Barbie dolls more relatable to a bigger number of girls. Their next release, Barbie, the white English girl from underprivileged background, abused by Pakistani gangs. And Ken, the cowardly English policeman who did nothing about it. For fear of being called a racist.
Now, of course, it's on the line, Father Calvin, but that's the point of comedy, isn't it?
That was good comedy, because he wasn't mocking the victims. He was using the victims to shine a light on the issue, and is actually mocking the police and the people that have not wanted to address the situation. That was good comedy. And I think comedy like that is important. You've had so many comedians on your show over the years who've been cancelled for addressing topics that are seen as taboo, but it's important that they keep pushing that line, because pushing it through taboo into the shifting the Overton window, as you said, helps us have the conversation. Our old friend Leo Kurse sent a message today saying he did his set last night on child rape gangs as well. And so this is happening. The comedians will be the ones to help us bring it into the lexicon where the politicians, the mainstream media don't want it to be said. And it's not a case that our politicians and our mainstream media don't know what's going on and it's too shocking for them to hear. It's that they know what's going on. They know how shocking it is. And that's why they want to hide it from the general public.
Exactly. And that's why I think Elon Musk's intervention, the free speech, which is now available to all on X, is hopefully going to change the Overton window on a whole load of these issues. But stand by, Father Calvin Robinson, because there are two extraordinary rows, big feuds breaking out on the right involving some names who you may have heard of for the right or the wrong reasons. First, Ben Shapiro versus Andrew Tate on the issue of pornography. And then, connected to that world, Bonnie Blue and Lily Phillips. I'll tell you all, and I'm intrigued by Father Calvin's reaction to this. He's back in just 1 minute. But first, do you feel tired all the time, struggle with brain fog, or feel aches and pains more often? These might be signs of something deeper than aging called oxidative stress. Now, it happens when your body is overwhelmed by unstable molecules called free radicals that can damage cells. Normally, antioxidants keep these molecules in check, but things like pollution, poor diet, stress, and lack of sleep can cause free radicals to pile up, making it harder for your body to fight back. So this is why I take Clean Being by Verso. It's packed with ingredients to cross the blood-brain barrier to lift brain fog, reduce oxidative stress and inflammation, relieving joint and muscle pains, and also improving skin and hair. After taking Clean Bean for some time now, I've noticed less aches and pains, healthier hair, better immunity, enhanced vision, and protection against allergic reactions. Plus, Verso publishes third-party testing from each batch they produce to guarantee you are getting what you pay for. So click on the link in the description in YouTube or Rumble, or head on over to buy.ver.so/outspoken. Use the coupon code outspoken when you check out, and you will save 15% on your first order. So the address, by the way, is in the show notes, in the description on YouTube and Rumble, but I will repeat it here for you too. buy.ver.so/outspoken. Use the coupon code outspoken. But now, back to the show. An extraordinary row has broken out between Ben Shapiro, the Daily Wire mogul, and Andrew Tate, the man who wants to become UK Prime Minister, over the issue of which is the biggest pornographer. And it's an issue which has also included two young British women who have become so corrupted by this new online pornography platform, a social media pornography platform called OnlyFans, that they are now engaging in acts that I think should make parents fear about where our society is going. Indeed, I think the actions of these two women, let me show you to them, Bonnie Blue and Lily Phillips, who have supportive families, who didn't grow up in poverty, have no particular reason to do what they're doing, is indicative of the moral decline that our country is facing. So these two women used to be friends, and they have been in a very public battle which has gone viral on social media over which would be able to sleep first with 1,000 men in 24 hours, breaking the world record. Now, Colin Rugg, I think, summed this situation up perfectly, writing that the OnlyFans creator says she has broken a world record by sleeping with 157 men in 12 hours. He goes on to say, OnlyFans is destroying this generation. The creator has bragged about sleeping with barely legal teenagers and husbands who cheat on their wives. The pervert, who was recently seen preying on a young man at Five Guys, was previously married in 2022 before things went south. The prostitute says her parents, who were initially not supportive because they are from an older generation, now support her. Her mother books her appointments. And if this feels too hard to believe, Bonnie Blue says that she is now making £600,000 a month from her OnlyFans account, which unfortunately is potentially going to encourage other young British women to follow in her footsteps. Now, here's the extraordinary video that she posted boasting about her so-called world record.
This is what my face looks like after taking 1,000 men less than 12 hours ago. I told you girls taking fluids for moisturizer was good for your skin. The big 1000 was completely done. So it started off, I'll give you a bit of an overview. After to start with, it was just like the room was absolutely full. Then we did groups of 5, like one after the other of 5s. I wanted to give people more time, so then it went down to like one-on-ones, didn't it? So like one person would watch whilst I was with somebody, and then it would literally just be like a rotating circle like that.
Father Calvin, what do you make of it?
So grim, isn't it? So grim. Where are we as a society when this is being celebrated? It's absolutely disgusting. That I want to say that poor girl, but I think actually the victims here are the people who are watching her and the people who think she's doing a good thing. It's crazy. Actually, she is the bad guy in this situation. People are like, oh, she's been, led astray. No, I've seen this, the video of her with the 5 guys, man, and she's like, do you want to come and sleep with me or something? He's like, no, I'm a Christian. I'm waiting for marriage. And that's the right answer. It's just gross. Who would want to sleep with the same woman who's just slept with 1,000 men anyway? And why am I using the euphemism slept with? This harlot is not sleeping with people. She's having sex with people. And she's clearly hurt and traumatized. I don't know what went down in her marriage, and that broke up fairly recently. So there's something going on there, but she's not dealing with it in a good way. But it's not just about her. It's about all the people who are being influenced by her and her wicked ways. Her and the other, I can't remember the other girl's name, but the fact that they're making £1 million every 2 months is of course a sign of the times, isn't it? Who is paying to watch these harlots online, and why? Like, what's wrong with your life that this is what you're attracted to? We need to bring back some good old-fashioned family values, getting people to marry young, start their own families, find contentment in contributing to society and being productive members of society, not whatever the heck this is.
Well, I want to show you this other woman, Lily Phillips, who used to be friends with this Bonnie Blue and did a similar challenge, which received headlines and went viral all over the world. This was sleeping, I think, with 100 men in 24 hours. And a guy was making a documentary about it. And before the acts, Calvin, it was all bravado and I love this and this is what I want. I'm sexually empowered. But I think her reaction after is worth looking at because it proves that this is not something that makes her happy. So let's have a watch of this.
It's like feeling so like robotic. Like by the 30th, when we're getting on a bit, I've got like a routine of like how we're gonna do this, and like it just sometimes you'd like disassociate and be like, like it's not like normal sex at all. In my head right now, I can think of like 5, 6 guys, 10 guys that I remember, and that's it. But it's just, I don't know, it's just weird, isn't it? Like if I didn't have the videos, I wouldn't have known I've done 100, But yeah, I think that was kind of the hard part, is like conversing with them, and like when they'd kind of be like, oh, like we've only had 2 minutes or 3 minutes and you said 5 on the message.
Did someone say that to you?
Yeah. And obviously it just makes me feel so bad.
Do you think you should feel bad about that?
I guess when you've promised something to people who support you, it's kind of hard to let them down.
But it's up to you, right? Like when
Yeah, yeah.
Have you even processed, do you think, what's happened?
Not yet. God, I won't forget this day, Jesus.
When I decided to start making this documentary, I wasn't too sure of what to expect. I certainly didn't expect to see Lily so upset at the...
Does that change your view at all, Father Calvin?
I mean, when she's in tears there and she's saying, look, I disassociated. I mean, that's what people do when they're raped, right? They disassociate and they leave their body essentially, because it's like their body's just being used as a piece of meat. And this is what's happening. She's volunteering her body to be used as a piece of meat. There's no intimate connection there. Like, sex is a very beautiful thing that happens between a married couple for that reason, because it's so intimate that it's not something you just dish out to 1,000 men or 100 men in a night. Like, to be sexually empowered as a woman is to know that she has that willpower to say no and to say yes, and to actually limit that to an intimate relationship with someone that she loves and hopefully someone that she's married to. There's nothing sexually empowering about laying there like a sack of cloth like a rag doll to be used and abused by hundreds of men. It's very, very sad. And the fact that she's still doing this stuff after going through all of that, she's still going ahead. That says that there's something wrong with her clearly, and she needs help. And for her family to not be supporting her in a proper way of saying, look, you need an intervention, for them to be booking guests or whatever they're doing to help, or managing her or whatever they're doing, it's just wrong. Everything about this is wrong.
Now, these two have become embroiled a little bit in terms of a major row on the right between the Daily Wire host Ben Shapiro and Andrew Tate. Now, Ben Shapiro, in an episode this week, and it was a very powerful one, advocated for the right to effectively stop supporting Andrew Tate. And of course, these two men have been very split on the issue of Israel and the conflict there. So it's worth putting that out there to begin with. Ben Shapiro, Jewish, of course, and Andrew Tate, a Muslim. However, Shapiro argued that a lot of the reason why Andrew Tate should not be considered a conservative hero is because his previous involvement in the pornography industry. So let's have a little watch of what Ben Shapiro had to say, and then Andrew Tate firing back.
Exactly did the right embrace Andrew Tate in the first place? Well, because there was a three-step process that took place on the right. First, in response to the left hating men, the right delinked strength from virtue. Virtue was supposedly the thing that made you a cuck, that made you unable to defeat the left. What is conservatism conservative and all the rest? In order to defeat that, you have to do things that are not going to be virtuous. Then the right actually linked strength with transgressive behavior, because the idea was that it took bad men to stop bad people, which sometimes is true. But then there was the final step. Some on the right have now fallen into the trap of believing that so long as someone is purportedly anti-left, no matter what insanely non-conservative thing that person believes, from the wonders of promiscuity and mistreating women to standing for Islamic jihadis, all of which Andrew Tate has done, you can commit literally any sin, up to and including being a and be treated to applause. Well, this has to stop because it's stupid and it's counterproductive and it is morally wrong. It turns out that in a reactionary world, the pendulum swings back and forth from wild, disgusting, terrible, radical feminism to sometimes wild and disgusting anti-woman trash. But there has always been in human life one constant. This is a conservative point. That constant is virtue. That's the constant. If you're...
But Andrew Tate wasn't having any of that. Watch.
Did you know that OnlyFans gives tens of millions of dollars a year to AIPAC? Ben Shapiro never mentions that, does he? Wants to cry his eyes out that I used to be a pornographer. Because I've admitted that over a decade ago, I had an e-girl studio. Girls would sit there in grainy footage, 480p, you could barely see anything, and sometimes they'd be topless. Yes, I've admitted it. I've talked about it at length. It's true. It's been a decade, but for some reason you want to pretend that still stains my character and I'm a bad person and I'm a pornographer. How come you're still taking money from porn today? And let's talk about the thing I did, my e-girl studio. You can compare that to Playboy. That is a girl sitting there with no top on. What you were doing, you were taking money from OnlyFans, which is far more comparable to Pornhub, homosexuality, transsexuals. Who's that woman who just slept with 1,000 men in a day? That was all on OnlyFans to make money, which then goes to AIPAC to pay for you. So for you to sit and say that I'm a pornographer because 10 years ago, I managed to buy myself a couple nice cars and a couple watches because there were some women sitting on a camera without a top on, while you are currently taking money from homosexual porn, transsexual porn, and the degradation of women at a level of whoredom we have never seen in history, and they are paying you right now, today, is absolutely hypocritical. And all these...
Father Calvin Robinson, where do you stand on Ben Shapiro versus Andrew Tate?
I actually think they're both in the wrong. I think...
Oh, go on. Why?
Pornography is one of the gravest evils of our day. It's creating more divisive relationships between men and women. It's destroying men's brains. It's harming relationships around the world, and it's leading women into prostitution and potential abuse. It's not a good... Pornography is not a good thing. However, the Jewish religion is not against pornography. It's against physical acts of sin, not against internal acts of sin. And so if Ben Shapiro is receiving money or AIPAC is receiving money from pornography, yes, they are guilty of that sin and it's wrong. Andrew Tate has admitted that he has done these horrible things in the past as well with his Hit Girl, He Girl, what was he calling them? Something Girl Studios. It's abysmal. Again, it's a form of prostitution. But it feels like to me he's trying to say that's 10 years ago, which is it seems like he's trying to move past it. If he is, he needs to repent of that. He needs to publicly repent of it because he's bragged about it in the past. And if he's no longer proud of it, he's realized that it was a bad part of his life, he needs to come out and publicly repent, show contrition, and move forward. And then we will show forgiveness as we do as Christians. So I'm interested to see where he goes next with this.
Interesting stuff, Father Calvin Robinson. So brilliant to have you back for 2025, and we will speak next week.
Thank you. God bless.
But I do hope you stay with us, because in the uncancelled after show today, big news out of California again, where Prince Harry and Meghan Markle are now Hollywood pariahs after the backlash to their LA fires disaster tourism grows. Now, TMZ has provided quite an intervention on this. And I mean, it's a PR disaster, isn't it, when you compare it to Catherine, the Princess of Wales, and the very graceful way that she announced that she was in remission yesterday. So with all of the latest news on this, the YouTube sensation P. Dina joins me live stateside, and she's going to reveal their latest bid at damage control. So we move to Substack to host the uncancelled after show, www.outspoken.live. It is our membership section where you get half an hour of extra content every day. So www.outspoken.live. If you sign up for the paid membership, you get access to the after show live or on demand every single weekday. Do subscribe, by the way, though. It's really, really important. I cannot tell you how, yes, even though things are changing for the better in terms of the big tech social media world, there's still, trust me on this, a lot of cancellation going on, a lot of people who are still having their platforms taken away. Look at the controversial issues we discuss. The only way, I guess, to protect myself against that and to keep this community going is if you do sign up at Substack, because that keeps the direct relationship. And as I say, you can do so completely for free. So www.outspoken.live is the address to do it on. It would mean a lot to me. Be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. UK time live. That's midday Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. If you are watching stateside, hit subscribe. If you're on YouTube or Rumble, of course, you can listen to us as a podcast on Spotify or Apple or wherever you get your podcasts too. Also sign up to join the incredible Dan Wootton Outspoken Club on X. You'll be surrounded by thousands of like-minded folk there, and it's a great opportunity to discuss further the issues that we have covered on the show today and every day. Most importantly, I promise to keep fighting for you. Hope to see you on the after show with P. Dina in just one moment.